here. It's Mike Azaria here. You're reading the minutes. Okay,
Mike Azaria and these gremlins.
Let's wrap up Jeronica when we get back. And are we? All right. Good.
We are back.
Let me know when we can confirm that. Okay, cool.
We are back. Confirmed.
We are. Great. Terrific. Thanks.
The margin traders tried to take us down, but we're back.
and we don't have Mike Azaria in the studio either, so he didn't do anything either.
Damn you, Planet Trading.
Conspiracy theories.
Okay, let's get back to what we were talking about. Jeronica, let's finish up this segment, if you don't mind.
Sure. I also wanted to talk about the Plex that CCP has stockpiled. I saw that Jintan, in the minutes he commented saying that the Plex prices are too high, and CCP replied saying they have a stockpile of Plex they were willing to put into manipulation, but I just don't think that'll have a long-term effect on anything unless they fix this free trading issue.
Well, is there a problem with high Plex? Does it hurt the game? People think it does.
It hurts the game. Like if people straight up like not being priced out of the game because of it, I think that's overall bad because CCP's all of these changes we've been seeing from CCP are trying to get more people online. If the cost of Plex is reducing the amount of people who are able to be online, I think that's overall bad.
Plex is a poll tax on living, and it's a regressive tax because you do not have to pay more just because you are higher skilled or better at actually sucking ISK.
There's three things I want to say about this. Is a higher ISK price for Plex is better for the consumer that buys Plex from CCP. They're getting more return for their purchase.
That's not true.
You don't think so?
Because then you're not taking into account the actual value of the ISK. What is its purchasing power? And right now, because of the huge ISK faucets, the purchasing power of ISK is actually sucky.
All right, that's fine to disagree. Let him get through his 3 points, and then we can come back to it.
The second thing is, basically like how much time people can spend, playing the game just to make the ISK to like Jintan's thing that's getting priced out. And the third thing I think I forgot.
I wonder why you forgot.
At the end of the day, if CCP is losing like long-term customers to the fact that they can't afford Plex anymore, I think that's bad. But that's just my personal perspective. Obviously, it's at the end of the day their balance sheet and their prerogative to fix that. It's just something that I like to raise with them.
Which is why they should really start listening to some of the arguments and the numbers that were suggested by Aerith, right? They need to come up with a number on average of what income you need to actually pay for a Plex.
Or how many hours it takes to earn that income.
Yeah, exactly. How long and on average, that means including all the lower rung and middle class people in you.
Well, okay, look. You kind of got to go back to what is the purpose of Plex, right? Plex was not invented as a social welfare program or anything like that, right? It is not. I mean, I'm being deadly serious here. That okay. It was invented to combat illicit real money trading, right? And the vehicle by which they were going to do that, or the method by which they were going to do that, was there are some people who have money in real life and would like to buy their way through the grinding of getting ISK, right? And then there are other people who apparently have a lot of time and eve that they can go and grind and be able to afford then buying those Plex to get their own game time. It never has been about this is for all the people.
The point is that it is exclusive right now. It pushes out the newer players and the people that do not yet have access to the ISK faucets.
And I would counteract that. I would counter that with they don't want newer players necessarily buying Plex. They want them to subscribe because subscribers become long-term payers. Yes, they might get a little bit more money out of it, but I still can't understand why a new player would, because it's impossible. It's almost impossible to grind 1.5 billion ISK worth of Plex, and
we're not talking about that. We're talking about established people. But anyway, we should probably get off this topic because this is a whole show in itself. Like we could honestly go for an entire show about it.
Rabbit hole. It's not just a whole show. It is literally a multi-year conversation.
It will always be the same conversation. Yeah,
Like,
there
it was
will
too
always
high
be
at
a forever
300 million. It was too high at 500 million. It's
All right.
too high at 1.3 billion.
All right. Our guest Jonica wanted to touch on it. We touched on it. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on, Jonica?
No, that's about everything I saw in the CSM minutes I talk about.
I do.
Can I just say one thing to Dirk? Because it is now, Plex serves the role of being a good alternative to a proper free-to-play model. So even though there might have been other reasons in the past, today it serves as a really good model instead of actually having a free-to-play game.
Yeah, I think that in the minutes, when it did talk about this stockpile of Plex that they have, that's for combating, really for combating kind of either manipulation or runaway prices or things like that. I still don't think that they've used it for that, at least not to where it's come up in any minutes since Dr. E back in the day. I think they're still trying to do it by using Plex sales, but that has limited effect. I mean, the fact of the matter is the price of Plex is just going to continue to go up as the utility of Plex continues to go up, and the incomes of people in the game continue to go up.
And as more risk gets printed into the game, it gets more worthless, and it will continue to go up.
That's the important number, right? It's the ISK faucet that increases the price. It's actually following it exactly on the same percentage per month.
All right. We'll move on. We'll do a whole show on Plex, how it works, what you should do, should you buy, should you not buy, all that kind of stuff. And we'll manipulate the market and make a ton of money while CCP tries to stop us. Okay, let's move on to CSM minutes, because we have a couple CSM guys here, Jintan and Newman, and we want to ask them some questions as we go along. So we'll just start at the very top. And I thought this was kind of funny. They said they opened up with greetings, and then they did roadmap, and then roadmap was totally redacted. So no information on roadmap directly from the minutes.
I would like to say something on that, which is that we did point out that it's really crap that people don't have access to a roadmap and people don't feel like they know, what the future is for the game. That's something we really tried to get across to CCP Seagull, and I think she understood that. So I've got real hope that we will see a roadmap in 1 or 2 months.
Oh, thank God.
Especially because some of the information later that CCP was revealing was that people feel like there's there's nothing happening. So I see how those two things relate. At the same time, people are, there's a gorgeous man behind you, Carneros.
Cabana boy.
I apologize.
Makes me feel like I need to work out. The thing is that if you tell players what's coming, they can prepare better for it. And the people who are 6-month thinkers that think 6 months ahead or a year, those guys know where it's going to go, so they start putting money in the right places and that sort of thing. So is it unfair advantage? Maybe. I don't know.
I don't think it's unfair advantage compared to the level of hope that it gives people when they know that there is a roadmap. I mean, in a way, it is a marketing tool. When you show that, look, we have plans, it makes the players of the game feel a little more confident in maybe what the future is going to be for you.
Oh, and the people that are actually investing in stuff like that, pretty much that's also a player retention thing, right? Because they stay.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's important because this game is a game unlike others where you do real investments for long periods of time. It's not just I'll play this for a few months and see if I like it. I mean, people who play this game seriously invest a lot of thinking into it. They invest money into it, certainly a lot of time into it. And so you want to make sure that your investment has growth potential because you like the direction of the company. So it's kind of like being a shareholder of EVE Online. Is this game going in the same direction that I think it should go, want it to go? And yeah, this is a good investment. I should definitely stick with it.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we give CCP money in the idea that the game will have its longevity and there'll be something for us to play in a few months' time. If we don't feel like there's nothing to pay, we're not going to be giving them that money.
All right. Well, our first stop is Resource Wars. What's going on there? Somebody want to explain it? I'm looking at...
What exactly have they made public, Jintan?
That's true. It's dangerous for you guys.
About production or?
Resource Wars.
Resource Wars, the new PvE.
It's going to be the sites are going to be size limited. You're going to be able to bring 1 to 5 people in it or something like that. And basically, you have the choice of either going and attacking pirates that are trying to kill NPC miners, or you can mine yourself. Basically, you just got to get as much ore as possible. I know some people are currently discussing using battle skiffs, and I think that's great. I would love to see that be the optimal solution to the site. Yeah, basically structured PvE. Hopefully, it's going to be below the income level of level 4s by a margin, but it's going to be more interesting than just running level 4s constantly.
It's also going to affect your standing as well.
Yeah, it's going to fix your standing as well. The real thing that we wanted to bring up is the fact that it doesn't really have right now a mechanic to set up pug groups, so that you can go looking for a group and get together 5 people and go run a site. I think that's something TXP needs to look into in the long term. But,
Is it going to affect your faction standing or just your standing to these new corporations that are associated with it?
I believe it's just, I believe it's a new corporation, but I cannot remember for the life of me.
Well, there are new corporations, and it does say that it's going to affect your standing towards them. I just didn't know if it was also somehow going to affect your
the rewards
the Imperial War Reserves, the State Military Stockpile, the Federal Strategic Material, and the Republic Fleet Ordnance.
Isn't that also to level the playing field so everyone kind of starts at the same point?
So, before we get really in depth into the mechanics, assume that you haven't read the dev blog, which I haven't. What exactly is it? What happens?
Okay, so what happens? Well, actually, can one of the CSM who can explain this? If not, I'll do it.
I mean, it's basically new sites for high sec.
What happens is these things appear. They're somewhat instanced in that they're limited in space, so only a certain amount of people can participate in any one. You warp in, and you can either mine or defend the miners as they go about their business. And there will be NPC competitors that will come in and try to stop you, so you'll have opportunities to fight or get killed. And I guess that's kind of like an incursion type setup. But for mining ops. And this was supposed to be an extension of training, because once you finish the tutorials, there really wasn't much to do. You just go and do missions, and that didn't feel right. They had when they looked at it, they thought that's not a good transition, so let's give them something to do in the environment that isn't a mission. And so this is what they came up with. I believe that's what they said.
You're also going to be dropping off the ore into the NPCs. You're not going to be keeping it.
Right, so you don't keep the ore. The only thing you get out of this is, faction standing, which is what you said. And you get, what are the rewards for doing this?
I believe one of the main things you get is a crate, which is kind of angled towards newer players, and it gives you kind of things that you'd like. We talked about this in the minutes quite extensively, talking about things that new players would want. I'd really like to say if you guys think we missed anything that new players would need to kind of help them get forwards in the game, please go and contact us. We talked about skills, we talked about some way to train faster, talked about ships, talked about fittings, things like that. It'd be great if we're missing anything for you to hang us up.
But yeah, the base rewards are going to be ISK, LP, and standing.
Yeah, but the LP can be traded in these crates, which are not random. I want to repeat that again. The crates are not random. They are a set loot table. Sorry, they're a set loot list that you get per crate.
It's like a dish set that you buy at Macy's.
Why would they put it in a crate and not make it random? I don't get that.
It's basically so you only have to click once. Otherwise, you'd have to get every single item. How annoying would that be?
Well, then don't call it a crate. Call it don't ignore the entire rest of the games industry's setups. Call it a package or a.
We have those loot crates already for those Blood Racer TUs, and they have those crates with certain events already. So, and for me, it's I think it's good that HiSec gets some new PvE content, something else to do, and some love for them. So,
I do. I want to say that I do love the fact that so many HiSec people are super butthurt about this. Because they just want there's a significant community that all they want is just more missions. Just give me more solo PvE content where I don't have to fight. Burners don't count for this apparently because they're too difficult and they require fits that they don't want to use. It's just they want more stuff they can do in their Raven. That's it.
But how much of the feedback that the CSM is getting does that actually reflect that? I mean, is it a small part of the high-sec communities that's saying that, or is that a large part, like a really large part?
I don't know. We can't really contact the high-sec community. They're also goddamn quiet.
I think this is also a topic for a different show, because I really love this topic, and that is somebody, I think it was Ancient Gamer Noob, brought this up, and I thought it was brilliant, and that was, look, we don't move to cities to meet everybody in the city. We move to cities sometimes to live among many other people, but just to be there by ourselves. And I think that EVE is kind of that world. That's what virtual worlds are. It's just one among many. So some people just want to do their thing, and missions are their thing that they do, knowing that there's a bigger, wider world, more political world around them, that they're part of something, but they don't actually have to engage it. And I think that's a big.
And there's room for that. I mean, there's obviously room for that in EVE. I mean, this PVE thing that they're putting out here with Resource Wars, is just a different form of PVE, and and it's a form that you can apparently group up with other people. It's just another new thing. I mean, Jen is right. There are a lot of people out there that ask for it, because missions are what they know, right? It's the known versus asking for, say, the unknown. So they have been asking for those to be updated or to get new missions put in, because it's easy to ask for that.
Yeah, the thing is, we've tried to get feedback from the community. Like, we had a PvE roundtable last year, and kind of the main feedback that we got from that is people wanted more social PvE like this. People wanted more ways to kind of work with small groups of players and kind of go have fun in high sec or in low sec.
Well, there's a caveat, though, and I think Incursions kind of proved this to me. When Incursions came around, I thought it was the best new gameplay in a long time, and this is right after Apocrypha, right? Because you could group up with people that you didn't know, and you didn't have to become their best friend. You didn't have to give them a blood sample to be able to be trusted by them. You really just kind of got into the game, and there was a talk channel, so you could actually be on voice comms to coordinate your strike force and play with them. And then when it was over, you could go away. And it was like, what, free sex in the 80s or 70s, where you just meet somebody, it's a short thing, and then you go on and you do the rest of your life. It wasn't this...
I was born in the wrong decade.
Yeah, I know. I don't have to commit myself completely to knowing who you are and that sort of thing. And that kind of stuff is necessary for people who want to basically live alone but have a social life. My God. I've gotten off track. Let's talk about quick recovery.
That Sex in the 70s thing was sounding good.
I was like,
I know, I was intrigued.
I was 7 years old. What do I?
We were talking about Resource Wars. We were one question that kind of came up is this going to encourage more new players, or a greater percentage of new players, to move into career mining as their choice for EVE?
Well,
yeah, potentially. I think I'm more hoping that it just breeds more small groups. Like, that's really what this is for. This is a reason for people to work together. I'm just hoping it makes those social corporations in high sec actually do stuff together.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and become more of a real corporations.
Yeah, totally. Because we got to kind of treat high sec as what it is. It's the nursery for where people build their connections and build their corporations and get together and eventually move on to whatever they do and start creating content for other people and start creating content for themselves.
Well, that's not condescending.
Well, no. How is that condescending? That's what it should. Well, that's what it should be for. But it's like. If people are going to start making their connections, when they start getting into the game, that is where they're going to do it. Like, you popping around your local systems and you bump into someone and go, hey, and you start a conversation, and then all of a sudden you've got a corp together or something. And I think more of this stuff is probably a really good thing for the health of the game overall, more competitive options. But again, totally right, there is certainly going to be a core element that all they want to do is log in, run their mission, or mine their belt, or whatever, and not talk or interact with anybody. And I guess CCP's got a really difficult balancing act, trying to appeal to both audiences, because it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. All right. We're going to skip the EVE economics. We talked about Plex, and again, we can spin that off to talk in a deeper way about it. So let's go to structures, though. They're going to change up the timers. What happened there, Jinton?
We're skipping all the way down to refineries, okay?
No, actually, this is just structures where the vulnerability timer is going to be spread, the 15-minute one. We already talked about that, but they did say in this section of the notes that they were basically going to focus on jump bridges, sino-jammers, and sino-beacons so they could actually replace the player-owned structures, the pauses of the past. So they are still on that path to eliminate the old structures and totally replace them with the new, right?
I think that's still the plan, yeah.
Yeah. There was some talk, and I read it a couple times. I couldn't quite get my head around it. Is it true that there are a lot of dead structures out there that people don't use, or is that just...
It's not that. That's not what we're talking about immediately. We're talking about the lack of maintenance that's required that will inevitably lead to that. Because we're not seeing it yet because structures haven't been out for that long, but we know this is going to be a problem. Like every single nullsec organization has a plan that if they get invaded, we're just going to spam our own space with structures and like just fucking make your life hell. Try and grind through everything, make people spend 1 million+ man hours to grind through every piece of shit that we put in our space, and that's just horrible.
Well, I think
that's terrible mechanic.
I think you saw a little bit of it, with the Northern Incursion or whatever the heck that was, with the roach motels that the Imperium was spreading around up there, right? These are all things that required, no maintenance. They just sit there. Not that they can't be used, but, generally they were, just sort of like, left out there all over the place.
Yeah.
I think we also talked a little bit about just having a little bit of logistical maintenance for like all structures. Like that's what the CSM wanted. So basically, you'd have to at least fuel it or something. And then if you did kill it, you'd get the fuel to drop, and it'd be, if these people want to fuel their citadels for 2 months or a year or whatever, or put the maximum amount of fuel that you can put in the hangar, then there's a possibility you get that big drop of fuel. Something for killing, an unused citadel.
It'll be like Mad Max, the War of Fuel, the War over Fuel. One thing we did, Dirk, I didn't know whether to say this or not, but if you want to talk about Lowsec section,
no, that was a joke to the audience.
Go to Open Comms because they totally covered it. Open Comms last night, big chunk of it was talking about Lowsec. I will bring this up because I don't know if it got brought up on Open Comms. People seem to think of Lowsec in terms of there's not enough content in it for the PvPers, but how come I never hear any criticism on Lowsec having an incentive for high secers, guys that want to basically play in some kind of safety? We don't really talk about them kind of creeping in and dipping their toe into dangerous space, Lowsec. Like, what are the incentives for them? What would be? Why can't we look at it from their point of view as well?
I think when it comes to Lowsec, there's a lot of different points of view to look at, and in the end, you still come out with it's always been bad. It's kind of it's going to probably get worse because of this moon situation changing, or it's going to change in a different way, whatever. But it's still going to be kind of the redheaded stepchild of Eve.
I mean, you mean asking what you want in terms of like PvE, which we specifically talked about in that, multiple things. We talked about how standings are a real barrier for people getting involved in F-War, which is, very much a high-sec bound issue. Like if you're a high-sec player who's like, oh, I want to try out faction warfare, you can pretty easily tank your standings and basically be locked out of where you might have lived before. We would really love them to put the let me actually check to make sure that's not been NDA'd out.
Well, isn't it that like
taking notes?
For a Lowsec, it's like, the high sec people that are only going to ever play in high sec, like they have no intention, and then it's like trying to change those people's minds a little bit and get some people to try it, and then there's some people that are like, I just got to be in high sec until I progress to Lowsec to nullsec, or then there's the new player that jumps straight into nullsec. There's just different mentalities, I think.
I think a Noisy Gamer put his finger on it. High sec Care Bears are going, if they're going to leave high sec, they're going to go straight for an empire that's established and stable, like either in the north with Darkness Coalition, or in the south with Goonswarm's Coalition, the Imperium. So they're going to totally skip over Lowsec and why wouldn't they? There's nothing there for them. There's maybe when I was transitioning, I went from high sec to low sec. It was to do a little bit better mining because I figured, oh, okay, well, I'll just, there's bigger rocks. I don't have to switch my lasers as much. And that was my incentive. That's what pulled me in to try to go into these dangerous waters to get a little bit further ahead. But I was killed within 2 minutes. So I turned around and said, yeah, okay, that's not the right place. There's no getting away with it kind of thing.
Oh.
Don't be sad for me, but like, is that all there was? Was just a bigger rock? It's like, really? Like,
I think.
Guess what? It's not worth it. For high seckers, it's not worth it.
I mean, the first time I actually went from high sec to low sec was because my little sandcastle, or my little high sec mining corporation got war decked, and I didn't know how to PvP at all because I'd only been paying for like 2 or 3 months. And these guys were causing all sorts of havoc. And I was like, well, where do I go to learn PvP? Faction warfare. It just went straight in there. And then a couple of months later, it was the Battle of Asakai, and the rest was history from there. I think Lowsec is probably having a bit of a crisis identity at the moment. I have no idea, literally no idea what the health of Lowsec is. But from what I can see from my perspective, it just seems to be you either go super big, aka Snuff, Shadow Cartel, and the like that, or you remain super small. And you just kind of do your thing, like you harass the faction warfare guys, or you get involved with the faction warfare stuff. I know the faction warfare things are certainly a lot more organized, and it's a nice stepping point for things. But I think there's no real sort of like identity other than you either go in and just potter around and do your own little thing. Like, where is the nursery for low-sec organizations to start pulling together following the moon changes and things like that you would have seen from Snuff and stuff like that?
Yeah, I just want to say that it is an NDA, but something that we suggested was bringing, say, Blood Raider Soitoyos. If we could have like Blood Raider Asbels in Lowsec with like just the caps, that'd be an interesting thing that would get people, Lowsec more unique PvE and give people a reason to coalesce there to do.
Because am I right?
PvE related.
Yeah, because am I right in thinking really the major PvE type things, the reason that people will want to populate Lowsec for income purposes is literally faction warfare, low-sec incursions, if you've got a group big enough to do them.
Level 5s.
And that's essentially it. What's level 5s? There you go. That was the one I was thinking of.
That's exclusive.
I think the point is that you keep using the terms nursery or preparatory training ground and stuff like that. I think the problem is that there is no overall idea of the individual ecosystems in EVE anymore. There's no actual function for Lowsec.
Yeah.
And the same with high sec, that you said that it's just a matter of how fast people get socialized and move out. It's like, what if you don't want to? What if you want to figure out how to live in high sec or low sec or wormholes? It's like these things need to have a clear identity and a clear function on the overall ecosystem. And right now, this has been lost. It might have been there like 7 years ago, but with everyone gets anomaly tits to suck on, it's dead.
Okay, let's end this topic here because it's, again, a rabbit hole that we would go down for ages. Maybe we'll invite Reza and Jintan back so they can talk about Lowsec on a different show. And hopefully they don't fight like they always do.
I'll try not to be fucking drunk as shit for that episode. How about that?
Start another Anime War 2. All right. So let's move on to live events. This is interesting because they designate live events not like they used to, where the devs get in there and try to make something happen. Live events are really this agency stuff, isn't it?
Seasonal. Yeah, like seasonal events, I'd call them more than live.
I think that was kind of interesting. And we did find out that Blood Harvest, is that what it's called, is back this for October. I guess it's their Halloween event. Then they will be going to an untitled mining style event that's going to be happening. And then we'll go into some kind of a Christmas event. And so it's interesting. It's kind of a seasonal thing that would give players an opportunity to do something that only lasts for a certain amount of time and then goes away. And then you have to wait for the next year for it to come back, which is kind of interesting. So it's not live events like it used to be.
I kind of like I don't think they've quite found the right balance yet, but I like the experimentation that's going on. I like the lot of the little bits of trying different things, and I like the variety of stuff because it kind of makes me sit there and look at it and go, "Oh, do I want to do this? Do I want to try that?" I love the thing through the tournament because I got my IGC Scout suit, which I love. It's like it's a great outfit for your characters. But I do like the experimentation. I'm going to be very interested to see how CCP develops it over the next sort of three or 6 months, because they seem to be adding iterations to it regularly, which is really, really nice.
I mean, it has somebody a team now as well. I think a team is solely responsible for it. Team Event Horizon, and that was it was kind of a before it was one of the team's like responsibilities for a different team.
Oh, I see. So it was now it's their sole responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I want to tell people that don't know that Tiberius there that was just talking with somebody who finished the Serpentis event and got himself a blueprint, and it burnt him out to some degree.
I needed a break for a month after that one.
Recovery time. So there's a lot of content in these things.
Literally, my only note out of that Team Event Horizon part of the minutes was I had highlighted. Steve added that it would be cool to have an event about salvaging. And then I just moved on.
You know, one of the biggest independent corporations in EVE Online is a corporation based around salvaging. And all they do is pair up mission runners that don't want to salvage with new people that don't want to fight. And they can, put those two together and they get to go and salvage and make money. And the corporation makes a little bit of that cut. And they have over 500 people that...
no way.
Yeah, but it's one of the things that for new players that join the Imperium is the first thing people say is go salvage. It's an easy way to make a lot of money, especially with the prices that are there now. And there are a lot of players also that don't want to salvage, so they pair up with like super carry ratters or carry ratters and then salvage the sides behind them. And it's a great way for new players to make a decent amount of ISK to get them into other things.
Yeah, I like. There's a mentor. When I first started, there was somebody who mentored me and was doing his level 4 missions or something, and he was just letting me go and loot the wrecks and stuff that I didn't even have salvaging skills, and that was actually kind of a bonding experience. So yeah, if you could arrange something like that, I think it's pretty cool. But it is a little forced to have a salvaging game because it sounds like you're at a company picnic and there's sack races and there's all these really like forced, fun things to do. It just seems a little bit forced. All right, moving on to, did we cover structures and timers? Because we've kind of touched on it a few times.
No,
not directly.
Not directly, and that's probably a pretty big topic. So,
right.
I mean, because one of the things I believe it was before the summit that Seagull's video postcard thing came out where it's like we hear these issues out there and the stuff about structures and timers and whatnot that they were supposedly going to be working on sooner rather than waiting until structures were all completely done. And the first step of this, I believe, was this particular part of the conversation at the summit where they were talking to the CSM about this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of vulnerability timers, I think the exact words I used were, this is choking your game to death.
Is that all? Nothing hyperbolic?
I think that's genuinely serious. It is choking the game to death. Like that's why if you look at what I said in the refineries thing. They was talking about having it as a default as 20 hours a week, and I was like, that needs to be like, those are rookie numbers. That needs to be 16 hours a day.
Mm-hmm. Well, they talked about
he wasn't joking. I mean, this is this is the thing, right? He was not joking about that. I mean, he was basically saying it needs to be more open to being shot. Get that happening.
I mean, certainly the initial reinforcement, like the first bit where the attacker goes, hey, you know what, we want to go and screw with those guys, so we're going to go over there. They should be able to go in, hit it, come out, and then defender gets the time that they need to, then you hit it. Whether you have a third one or not is debatable, but certainly the initial attack should always be on the onus of the attacker, and then the secondary defense should always be on the defender, as far as I'm concerned on these things.
You have to give the attacker the prerogative.
Exactly. And because if they don't have the prerogative, if they look at a timer and sit there and go, that's at 3:00 in the morning for me, or that's on this time for me, or it's in the middle of a week and I'm going to have to take a day off to organize this, they're not going to do it. Whereas if they log in and go, hey, who we can do? Oh, we're going to go screw with these guys. Let's go screw with them and reinforce that structure and go, okay, we need to be back on this day. Cool, fine. But at least they control the initial engagement. And that's the important thing.
Well, they did talk about it being, I think CCP Fozzie suggested, what if the first timer didn't have any vulnerability? Like, it could always be attacked. So maybe they're...
For me, that would be ideal.
I think we all wanted that.
Yeah, and CCP Fuzzy says here, he then asked the CSM how they felt about a hybrid system based on the POCO. And I think a lot of people have actually, kind of gotten behind that, similar to the POCO idea.
That's player-owned custom office, and that's something that hovers around a planet, and it has a different kind of defense system than everything else, I guess.
Yeah, you can shoot it you can shoot it initially at any time, and then it starts kicking into its timers phase.
Apple Pay?
Yeah, what you do is you set, when you deploy a POCO, you set a timer between a 2-hour timer. When you want the POCO to come out of reinforce, you can say between 1 and 2 EVE, or 1 EVE and 3 EVE, etc. You set a timer. It can be shot any time, but you decide when it comes out so you can defend it at that time.
There's also something on the notes that says there are a large number of design assumptions based on structures not always being vulnerable, such as defenses not being automated.
Yeah, like that was a conversation. It's just that the original design documents and kind of thoughts around citadels, were based around the fact that the vulnerability timer would be small. So it's going to take. They believe it takes more work to make it work with the current mechanics. I disagree, and I think they could solve a lot of these problems by literally just saying citadels are already always vulnerable now, or maybe you just have an invulnerability period of 8 hours. You can put it in a day, and just the other 16 hours it's completely vulnerable. I don't like the way it is right now, and I think it's actively harming the game.
Yeah. There's something else you brought, so we're going to skip a little bit over to nullsec and sovereignty. You also brought up in a strong way that Entosis isn't healthy for the game. It's not promoting healthy habits for people, and you would like to see it.
Once again, I will quote myself.
Yeah.
Entosis is a fundamentally broken mechanic that will never work within the concept of EVE Online, due to the fact that it forces gameplay which is not seen anywhere else, and is, for a good reason, not seen anywhere else. It reduces combat and the ability to hold grid from you holding, overall combat superiority in an area to you being able to kill, 2 or 3 specific points of failure. You are not encouraged to destroy your opponent's ability to fight. You're encouraged to destroy your opponent's ability to keep 1 or 2 people alive.
All right.
And that means that you have this degenerate gameplay.
Your mic is kind of you're digitaling out, but I think it's okay. We understood it. And what was interesting about that was you said that, but also that CCP kind of agreed. They're like, yeah, and it kind of seemed like they were insinuating that they might phase out Entosis down the road.
I don't even think it's an insinuation. I think it's an absolute guaranteed thing that's going to eventually happen. The question is the timing of that, right? Everybody is saying, please make the timing now so we can get back to something that isn't this, right? But CCP Lyrican, also said after that point, and this is from the minutes, CCP Lyrican proposed allowing ships in Tosising to be able to receive remote assistance.
Yes, please.
But with, a 50% remote repair impedance. And the CSM generally agreed it would be better. I think a lot of people think that, let there be some sort of remote. I mean, otherwise you just get what we have now, and it's just. But whatever.
Yeah,
if they're eventually going to do away with Entosis, then maybe that doesn't even matter right now. And do we really want them spending time on it?
Eventually, we in the summit we kept laughing at the phrase of near future, which is 6 months to 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So yeah, in the near future, maybe they'll get around to fixing Entosis.
Well, again, I want to go back to that. What is your gut feeling? Because Seagull's last missive to everyone, and I understand that I believe she's out on leave at the moment, but was basically we hear you. We're going to move up our timetable in addressing some of these things. We were going to wait until all the structures were complete. Do we think that is being moved up? I mean, should we expect something in a legitimate near term? I don't necessarily mean by year end, but 6 months.
As I put in my summary, I don't think we're going to see anything in the next 6 months that will address these like choking concerns of the game, and that's where I came away from being so disappointed.
We'll come back to nullsec in a few minutes. Let's get back to community, which is another thing that came up, and I thought that a few things came out, and I can just read through these really quick, and you guys can comment if you want to. We did talk already that people perceive that nothing's happening and that FanFest was underwhelming, and we actually had a show on kind of FanFest and how it did seem a little bit underwhelming because there was no new material. It was all review of the year before, and that's a change from before. Used to be kind of a big hype fest where they show you a brand new beautiful trailer. They'd get some buy-in on this vision where they were going, and it just like gave you were super hyped up for weeks after FanFest. And this time it's kind of the opposite where you're like, yeah, I heard all that stuff. They did confirm some new things, and all right, back to the game. There wasn't that.
I think it's intentional. I don't think it's like just happenstance that it's underwhelming. Like I think they're focusing more on like celebrating the players and like a actual like like community party kind of thing rather than like tying the dev cycle to FanFest and when the releases. I mean, this past FanFest we had a bunch of release information come out like 2 weeks before FanFest, and it allowed them to talk to the players at FanFest about what they thought. So it kind of felt like a review because we had the information. It wasn't given to us like on Thursday or Friday or Saturday, but we actually had it before FanFest, and we could talk about it at FanFest with devs.
Right,
Yeah.
you're not just talking about the hype, you're talking about the details, like you've actually had some time to process it and be able to discuss it with them, as opposed to just seeing something on a screen, the whole audience cheers, but nobody really understands kind of.
Yeah, they're just...
Which from a design point of view, like from somebody that's sitting there having designed these sort of things and wanting to unveil these things and have meaningful conversation, which let's be honest, like FanFest for developers getting FaceTime with their most ardent players is top notch. There's no other place really other than Vegas and EVE Down Under where they get a chance to really, really do that. And for a developer point of view, that's great. From a marketing point of view, it's awful. Like I consider it like absolutely terrible because last year I went to FanFest. I knew exactly what they were going to do. I was like, okay, new things. Let's see what we've got. Blood Raiders Soyotos. And that's literally the new thing I walked away from FanFest. If you went to some of the side stuff, then there were like little tidbits and things here and there, which were pretty cool as well. But that's only if you went to the side stuff. And I think from a developer point of view, brilliant. It's great because it really does give the developers that point to do that. But I think from a marketing and a hype point of view, it just falls flat on its face every single time.
Yeah, if I were going to FanFest, I'm coming for Christmas. I'm not coming to be part of a focus group. Like I would, run for CSM if I wanted to do that. I'm coming to like be among the people that are celebrating this game that I am so totally celebrating, and I want new stuff. So if I'm going to pay all that money to go visit that, I want to meet the developers. I want Christmas presents, and I want to have a great time. So I guess that's it's important to them, though, in order to produce a better game, to take that opportunity to take in what you guys are, what the audience is actually thinking. And that's interesting because the dev cycle is no longer tied to those meetups, Vegas or FanFest, which is interesting.
That being said, right? I mean, for stuff that is coming in the near term, it is better that they release the information kind of before, which allows people to talk intelligently about it when they get there, right? On the other hand, there probably does need to be something, whether you're watching these things remotely or you're going to them, that gives you a bit of hype about something that's out in a little bit further distance, right? And that's where that whole roadmap thing comes in. Mm-hmm. They've got to be able to give that kind of longer term hype without overhyping it, and we end up in a Incarna situation or player built Stargates from 3 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. And by the way, Arenda says nobody goes to Iceland for pea shark, which is kind of funny because I guess they have really exotic food in Iceland.
If you mean exotic, by goat and fermented shark, then yeah.
It's not exotic to Vikings. They've always eaten that, I guess.
If any of your fellow capsuleers invite you to try the Hakarl, it's a trap.
Oh my god!
Turn back. All right. A couple other things from the community that was interesting was that the new forums are doing about the same as the old forums were doing. We'll see if that actually gets better over time since it's a different technology. Be interesting to see how that goes. The return of Scope Network is something they want to push. And the 07 show may be finished or changing because they have a new idea, maybe exploring what they're doing now, which, Tiberius, you want to tell us what they're doing instead of the 07 show?
Well, they're still going to do the 07 show, but as I understand it from the notes, and the CSM guys can probably correct me wrong on this one, but it's going to be broken down. It's going to become less rigid. Like there are moments where the 07 show is produced, and there may be nothing to talk about because there's no real development news. So it's going to become more individual sections. It's going to be smaller bite-sized chunks, and I need to get out of this site before this nuke comes and sacks me. And as I understand it, it's just going to focus on smaller individual things and make it a bit more flexible as a whole. It's not going away as such, and more promotion on regular streaming as opposed to a more rigid structure.
Right. And in the audience, Arendis is disagreeing that the new discourse implementation of forums is not better than the old ones. And so he says a lot of people have left because of that. Okay, so that's the new thing with streaming. They're going to turn it into kind of more of a channel rather than a show and allow other people to come and stream. So it'll be interesting to see if that experiment works to give them a little more participation, but at the same time, create more ongoing content for EVE Online to keep it in people's imaginations. Wormholes was something that was discussed primarily by Newman, our guest. And one of the things I wanted to ask was, what's the drone mystery about?
The drone mystery you're talking about?
Oh, the drone damage to
yeah.
Oh, okay. The drone bug that everybody's so unhappy about. Basically, after one release, it was a noticeable change of how the sleeper AI aggressed drones, and it was like people were using rattlesnakes with geckos, and the sleepers would change to the geckos so rapidly, then web them down and keep them, you couldn't really pull them back fast enough, and you were losing your geckos like really, really quickly. Compared to like the day before the patch, it was, not as bad. So there was a big change, a noticeable change of the aggression of sleepers, basically, towards drones.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. All right, so what's going on in Wormholes? What did you guys talk about?
Basically everything that I've said for the past couple summits. I don't beg CCP to, produce these kind of things that I want or the community wants, next month or whatever. It's just like when they do get around to, finally saying, hey, we're going to do some stuff for wormholers directly, like maybe they can go back through the summits and through the recordings and stuff like that and have like, something to start from. But basically, I just went over my Wormhole town hall. Every summit, basically, I have a town hall 2 weeks beforehand. And while I'm at the summit, I just re-listen to the town hall, take notes, and basically, say exactly what came out of the town hall straight to the devs.
Good representative.
Now, one of the things that got brought up in there, and it really was kind of only a one line in the middle of, I'm not even sure it went with the previous stuff to some extent, but CCP Fozzie added that Tech 3 modules are inevitable at some point in the far future. And there's that word, right?
It's worth noting that this is actually just a rhetorical technique that Fuzzy uses a lot, where he says, given that CCP lasts for an infinite amount of time, I think it's inevitable that we'll do this. Yeah. That's actually a thing that he used, I think, at least 4 or 5 times. It's just a way of him saying, that's design space we will eventually look at, but we're not looking at it right now.
That's like saying that mass has gravity. Eventually, 2 things will come together, but the planets will probably stay apart for a while longer.
Yeah.
Eventually, theoretically, they should come together.
Yeah, like a TLDR of the wormhole stuff is like basically we have a problem with Astralis farming drifters. We'd like more scrams in the sites to give a little bit more risk to MJD battleships. We'd like the site lifetime to be looked at, so sites don't stack up in unused wormholes. They'd be a little bit better distributed. We basically talked about the medical clone issue that got fixed. But people that have medical clones need to be like retroactively kicked out of the wormholes, citadels and stuff like that. But and then of course moon mining.
Oh yeah,
they know we want moon mining in wormholes.
They kind of said they are thinking about something scaled down for you guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want the same rewards and the same resources that nullsec and lowsec get. We just want the activity, right? Like we want to have the scheduled mining op thing. It would give corps, income and stuff like that.
That'd be a great bonus for wormhole groups, I think. Yeah.
Well, what about these resource war instances?
They're not going to be in wormholes, I don't believe.
Right. It's all for high sec or empire space.
Yeah, we'll give you those before we give you moons.
Yeah, but I was wondering, like, if that would be, if that'll sate you guys or not. Well, the thing about it is, I always thought that moons had minerals in wormhole space.
I don't think you can turn on the moon mining laser.
Oh, so if they have it, you can't mine it.
Right.
Yeah, and they do the same thing with super capitals. Theoretically, you can build them in that space, you can move the materials into that space to build them, but they're not buildable because you don't have sovereignty.
Right, no outpost or what is it called? Not outpost.
Infrastructure.
You need the
iHub
you need an
upgrade.
iHub with the upgrade.
Yeah.
Right, because you need to claim that territory as your own, and you can't do that with wormhole space. So in a couple ways, they lock you out with a mechanic, but they don't actually say you can't do this. They just say it's, eventually you find out it's not possible through some weird mechanic. Interesting. All right. So thanks for that update on wormhole space. When I looked at that section, it was like Noobman says.
I mean, you can ask Jintan. It's one of the only meetings in like the 3 summits we've had that I basically come with a list and I get through the list and I'm like, hey, I need to keep going. Like, let me get through my list.
We basically stay out of Noobman's way, and Noobman plows his way through everything that he has to say.
Are you coming to Vegas, Noobman?
What's that?
Are you coming to Vegas?
Unfortunately, my sister. Well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. My sister's getting married the same exact weekend. So.
Yeah, what is the unfortunately part?
I think that was a Freudian slip.
Bring your sister to Vegas.
Unfortunately, it's on the same weekend.
My sister's name is Cersei.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Don't let her near any steps.
All right. 2 steps too far. Backing up. It's too bad because I wanted to say that Newman is a big guy. He's a huge presence, right? He's as big as Dirk and I, but he's
6'4", 300 pounds.
You can't talk about, is he fat shaming Matt Roll?
No, he's muscular. He's not. No, I meant his height. He's a huge guy. All right. Moving away from wormholes, let's talk about UX real quick. Standing changes. This is something that I got some experience with over the week, and that is the new standing changes because they fixed the UI. It really helps a lot because you can see what your progress is in a few ways. You can see how many missions are helping you in a graphical way. But also, you can see how many pretty much missions you need to do before you get to the next level agent, which I thought was pretty interesting. So kudos to CCP for making that a little more engageable as you run missions. And there's something else that I don't know. I never saw this in a feature release, but if you take a mission from an agent, you go and you do the mission. When you come back, when you complete the mission, you can select complete mission, and the mission's completed, and you get the rewards. You don't have to be back in the station. But when you get back to the station, it's already requested you to do another mission and assume that you're going to say yes. So you just hit accept. You don't have to request, then accept. And I just thought that was like so simple a fix and so effective a result, because that means you can kind of just cycle through the missions without having to hit a bunch of stuff or forget to put stuff in your cargo. And they also now have a cargo warning. So if you don't have the thing you're supposed to deliver in a distribution mission in your cargo, it'll say before you undock, hey, you can't take off. You don't have the stuff you need. And I think that's a real time saver, because it used to be.
I thought that has been for a couple of years now.
Well,
I was just about to say that May is not done missions for a very, very long time.
It's a lot of dust that I had to kick off the boots to do these missions, but a lot of neat little changes for NPE that I didn't know existed from 2010 when I was probably doing them last. But anyway, good stuff there.
Last time in a mission.
Yeah.
Did you see the damsel?
No, I refuse to do that mission because I'm not about murder. What's 100 million cargo alert warning, Jintan? You brought that up.
Yeah, it's actually a bigger thing. I actually had an edit to that sentence which got removed before we put it out because it was they felt it was kind of a bit too editorializing me editorializing a bit too much. But what I said in the meeting was that I wanted there to be a warning to help new players understand that you can be ganked in high sec. You know, you're carrying 100 million. You're probably carrying all your stuff in like a T1 industrial. You're just going to get wrecked by like one thrasher. And I wanted to make it clear to CCP that I thought that there was a kind of a drive to nerf ganking mechanically in order to stop new players from getting that bad experience and quitting the game as a result of that, when realistically the problem from that is not at all mechanics. It doesn't matter if it's, if it takes 2 thrashers or 1 thrasher to kill a T1 industrial. The real thing that new players need to be able to deal with ganking, to be able to deal with dangers of high sec, is they need information. They need CCP to say, hey, look, here's some issues, here's what ganking is, here's how it works. I also brought up the concept of having a bad guy tutorial, which is something I've pushed for.
A bad guy tutorial?
I like it.
Yeah. Okay,
I like it.
This is something I pitched during our first meeting with Genesis, and I believe it got redacted, and we never had that mission put out. Those minutes put out. I wanted high sec players. I wanted one of their missions as part of Inception to be you go and you gank a NPC hauler, and you get killed by Concord. So that kind of just that teaches you, hey, you can kill people in high sec. That is a thing that you can do, but this is the response of it. This is how it works. But it teaches that from the fun angle of, I get to kill someone and the cops kill me. Haha, fuck the police. That's awesome. Isn't that so neat? I want every player to experience that because it sounds so cool.
It should be
it's
said,
so amazing.
You're the one that has the mask that you loaned Eris so he could disguise himself, right? So I have a feeling you have spray cans, a backpack, you have a mask to disguise your face from all the facial recognition stuff that's out in London. Anyway, so it totally suits your personality.
I tell you what, actually, funny enough thinking that, I had no appreciation to actually how fun ganking was until I actually tried it out myself. And so I like the idea completely resonance with my own experience. It's like I was like, filthy gankers, how could they do this? Oh wait, I'm ganking someone. Hey, this is fun. Let's do this some more. You
guys are like, oh, I didn't know I would like the vampire lifestyle till I tasted blood.
Exactly.
High sec ganking is so much fun. I have not for nothing, and all the for mini love there is getting very close to real -10. So that's a goal for me. But
Well, Wolfglen struck again while we weren't looking. Thank you, Wolfglen, for a generous contribution. And thanks, Newman, for subscribing. He reminded me that I could subscribe too, so I did. Thanks, guys, that are putting in that kind of stuff for the show. All right. Let's move on to the next thing, which is balance. We want to talk about balance. And well, actually, let's just go through some of the stuff that was kind of fun, because at this point there was a lot of ideas thrown at CSM was throwing a lot of ideas at CCP. So there's Aerith brought up a hairdryer module where you can basically burn a different ship.
Well, you can apply heat damage.
You can apply heat damage, which means what to their modules?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Which kind of is interesting because if you apply too much heat damage to a module, you burn that module out and make it useless. So it'd be like attacking modules instead of attacking a ship.
He calls it the hairdryer. That's funny.
That's hilarious.
But CCP replied that a similar idea had emerged in the past, but they haven't found a way to make it work that felt good for everyone involved. Now, I assume they mean like felt good for like the developers or something like that, right?
Felt visceral.
As opposed to it felt good for the players involved.
Yeah. Well,
it doesn't feel good when all my modules get burned out.
Another visceral idea was a berserker ship where you can do more damage, but you are susceptible to getting damaged faster, which was kind of interesting.
Isn't that
polarized weapons? Yeah, isn't that not polarized weapons?
Or another way would be the lower your health is, the more damage you deal, or the faster you attack, or something.
That's the way I read it.
Oh,
the way I read it was you're taking a lot of damage, and therefore you're kind of dishing out, some extra damage on your way down, sort of thing. Now, one of the things that I think it said in there was something about they were afraid of how it could be gamed or something like that, and I was too dumb to understand how it could have been gamed. But
gankers will just love it because they'll be able to turbocharge all their ganking ships straight off the bat.
Basically that. Yeah, your friend can shoot you down to low health, and then you start the battle at this high DPS.
It's like you hype each other up, pounding each other's shoulders, and then you jump in and terrorize. It's like football rituals. And it's funny because
this is why we can't have nice things in EVE.
This is a game made by Vikings, and there's no berserker ship. It makes sense to me. And then Newman brought up a line of sleeper modules.
Yes, I'd like to read straight out of the notes. Basically, CCP Rise, it said, he asked the CSM if they had any ideas for new ships or modules, things that would make cool additions to the current ecosystem. And it says, Newman brought up an idea of having a complete line of sleeper meta modules, as well as like sleeper holes as well that could, and Bozzy said, they could have the idea of basically changing what the ship does or what the modules do in different wormhole effects and stuff like that. I mean, that doesn't have to be attached to that. That doesn't have to be the gimmick of it. But basically, Rise says in the notes, like, this is exactly the type of idea that they were looking for. And that was one of my favorite things of the entire summit was the possibility of, a new line of, wormhole, stuff that comes from wormholes.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting how that could actually mutate into something that's different.
It reminds me of the effects generators on Titans, although that doesn't get used as much as you might think.
It has. I've seen it used. NC used it a couple times, and it did save some lives by changing the nature of the way damage is done in that system through the use of a Titan booster. So I have seen it work, but yeah, I haven't seen it widespread, and certainly people don't require it as part of your training as a Titan pilot in NC at least. Beta modules is something that Jintan brought up. What was that?
Beta modules is kind of like, it's an idea that I absolutely love. It's something that CCP's kind of tossed around internally, something that we heard on the grapevine that is the intent to kind of have modules appear in the game, kind of like, you remember Inferno? We had all these new modules added to the game in like one big chunk. Those modules took a shitload of time to develop, and some of them kind of didn't work out well, like the TSBs. And what they want to do is maybe at some point have a shorter kind of cycle of developing modules, and then put them in the game for a limited amount of time, like 6 weeks, 2 months, that sort of range, and then let people play around with them, and then at the end of it all, just nuke them from the game, turn them to scrap metal, or turn them into tokens that you can give back in and get money, and use that to kind of test out new effects in the game, see how they would affect the meta, and have that make EVE feel a bit more alive in terms of modules.
So beta, you mean beta in the...
around it? Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Sorry,
we brought up the idea of like different ammos as well. That's actually where we got into the whole damage change, because we talked about the there's actually T2 ammo that's unpublished for every single race. We thought, maybe we could bring that in for a couple of days or something like that.
So when you said beta modules, you weren't saying second-rate modules. You were saying modules that aren't ready for prime time, so you could use it as a testing.
Yeah,
limited time modules.
Limited time.
Because
limited time, but the module itself didn't have a limited time. It was a limited time those modules could exist in the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they all go away. Okay.
Yes.
And that brings on a really interesting thing, because you can put these modules and you can put all these things on the test server, and you can theory craft them as a developer. on paper as much as you like, but until you actually give them to players to mess around with, you don't actually really know what people are going to do with them. And that would essentially solve that entire problem. And to get a little bit of a reward of, hey, you have these modules left over, you can buy them back or something like that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and you can do it with the other things. Like you could say have something that we talked about was like, not that we talked about, something that Bryce brought up as an example of something that they could potentially try would be like, hey, what if we had, I don't know, what if we had a T2 autocannon ammo that could do cap damage? Maybe that would help make autocannon better for mediums. We could even make it medium only. Stuff like that. Like you can do anything you want. And they don't really have to worry about the long-term consequences, just the short-term consequences.
It would switch up the meta too, right? It would, instead of being Ishtar's online, Tengu's online, Makarel's online, for these 2 months, a module for this ship, that's good on these, this race, makes this ship really good. But it's not screwing over all the people that have trained to get into that ship, but it'd be able to shake up the meta.
So what were the arguments?
Now I got to go buy a 2-month doctrine?
That's true.
You know what?
Yeah.
Put them into the agencies. Put them in with the agency rewards. Like you're doing stuff for a particular corporation within Eve that's developing a brand new module, and your reward is this brand new module that may or may not make it into a game, but it's going to be a limited run thing. And if they introduce it fully, they introduce it fully. If they don't, they don't.
Yeah, that just means they've got a lot of data that they can go back, they can work with, and if they feel that the gameplay it encouraged was good, they can spend that 1 month again. They'll make it good, they'll make it perfect, they'll balance it out, and then they'll really introduce it. And it just gives CCP more of a way to do stuff. And that's all we've been talking about. All we've been talking about for a long time is how can we make CCP balance the game faster? How can we get more content out quicker? How can we keep people invested in the game? How can we evolve it? And this is something that I thought had so much promise in that.
Well, we'll see if it happens. It sounds interesting. What were some of the arguments against it, by the way?
I don't think we really had any, apart from that people might be pissed if they get the module and then it disappears.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
one of the other things that Jintan brought up there, and I'd really like to get him to kind of flesh this out just a little bit. Jintan asked whether it would be possible to add ammo that allows more weapons to select their damage types. CCP replied that they aren't strongly in favor of doing so, as it removes the decisions inherent with the weapon choice. What were you looking for? You're not looking for lasers to do kinetic damage, are you?
Explosive damage, yes,
yeah. Well, I don't know if you know this, but this actually exists in the game right now. There is a crystal called Blaze that you can put in. It's unpublished, but it does exist. And
I've seen it in the database.
And what it will do is it will turn some percentage of your EM and thermal damage into explosive damage. And it basically stops lasers from being EM and therm locked, but it also comes at the penalty of it being mid-range ammo only. And, so you don't get the range of Scorch. It's also got a significant damage penalty compared to regular crystals, 20 to 30% DPS reduction. And I think that's something that the game can do with, because I think right now there's a huge problem where if you're a smaller entity, you have to have either a doctrine that has selectable damage, or you have to have multiple doctrines that you can reshift into immediately. I don't think it's fair to only punish Amar and Galante when you don't punish Kaldari and Bimbasar in the same way. Especially, I know the reason why that was originally put in the game is because hybrids and lasers were made deliberately stronger and deliberately more powerful to counteract that. The problem was that doesn't work long scale in the game. And I think damage locks are getting to the point where just because Intel has gotten so good, because people understand now how to counter it, I think damage locking is becoming an impotence for the game to expand.
Speaking of
when you have to have 3 doctrines to be able to counter it.
Speaking of impotence, your mic is dying out.
Fuck's sake.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's actually you're digitizing. It's all right. This is something I wanted to pick up because we have Dirk here, but they actually discussed ghost training and how much, say, damage it did to the game. And all that kind of stuff. And then they actually said something when they were asked, I think by Jintan, what actually happened? Why didn't you guys get on top of this as an exploit before it, got to as bad as it did? Because the community of players actually got kind of upset that it was taking so long for them to put the brakes on it or to say, don't do this or you will be punished to the other players. And they basically said the pre-9/11 FBI CIA thing where like everybody had a piece of the puzzle, but we didn't communicate with each other. And that's what, caused us not to be able to say this is an actual problem. Let's get on top of it. But as far as damage, how much damage did Ghost Training do?
It didn't really say in the minutes. It didn't really quantify it like that. I think what they found was that, look, there were quite a few people that fell within their net, right? But 90% of those did not appear to be intentionally ghost training and exploiting it, right? The other 10% were. Apparently, there were some rather large ones as well, but about 90% of them didn't appear to be doing it intentionally for exploitation purposes, anyways.
Yeah,
and they gave people an option too. They made this public. They said, you can either we'll hand you extractors. You can extract all this SP that we have deemed that you've ghost trained and you've exploited, or you can pay us the IS value of it. Or if you've already spent all the ISK and you have assets now, you can give us those assets to pay, for your exploitative behavior.
I mean, I think there was actually GM Lelouch did a really good job in here explaining to you guys what was going on. At least the minutes seem to be fairly comprehensive in this customer service section related to ghost training. But one of the things Jintan asked if CCP saw an increase in ghost training after the exploit announcement, to which GM Lelouch replied that they actually saw the opposite, where many of those that were ghost training logged in immediately and stopped training on all their characters. Friggin' shocker that when you declare something an exploit, that the people who are doing it are all of a sudden going to stop, as opposed to one of the other theories of, well, we don't really want to, declare something an exploit because then, or we don't want to mention this because then people might go out and do it. No, if you come out and you say that something is an exploit, people are not going to then turn around and start doing it. They're going to turn around and stop doing it, which is why
essentially the people that do keep doing it are basically asking for it, really.
Didn't they know? Didn't they set a deadline too, saying if you do it past a certain point, and that's why people?
No, it was from the date that the error occurred. That's how far back they went.
Oh, okay. So it was retroactive. Okay.
Yep.
And there's a question for Caleb. There, the guy that had 400 hours or 400 days or however 400 accounts
400
of
characters.
400 characters.
Wow.
Caleb, did you know that guy?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So we actually know the guy that was.
But it's several that had 100 and 200 or in that realm, so it was not that unique.
Yeah.
The thing is that it was mostly farms for SP farming, and then by mistake, also to some intentionally let them lapse and ended up ghost training. I'm sure that most of them were not actually intending it.
Right. And it was interesting to see somebody in that position, because I kind of heard third party, that kind of how it affected them. And it was really interesting that they were kind of stuck. They weren't trying to do anything wrong, but they have so many characters that it would take them hours and hours of their real life time to fix it with CCP. So I think they said something like, he said, can I just pay you a bunch of money, instead of having to go and, physically fix 400 accounts, and that's that kind of thing.
I think it was those scales that actually made CCP consider that there was more than just one option of compensation when someone was in the wrong, because they realized that if you are managing that many, it's very easy to just by mishap or because you don't really want to farm your zombies anymore, to just leave them, and then it's actually not intending to ghost train. You're not doing it deliberately. So when they then get caught and actually want to make amends, then they need to have different avenues to actually compensate for the exploit.
Yeah, I thought that was a very real world problem.
It's nice that CCP didn't just flat ban everybody. I mean, I think they said they banned some extreme cases, but they gave this other option to so many people rather than just saying, these hundreds of accounts, you're all banned and everything you have is taken away from you.
There was a lot of talk of abusing it in the form of short-selling things that are about to tank.
Well, it was interesting to see how CCP was willing to work with that guy. I thought that was really interesting. Just like Newman says, they didn't go after. And this is, I mean, Aerith was saying, you got to ban the top, 20 offenders, like no questions asked. And he was very draconian about it. But CCP didn't take that advice. They said, we'll work with people to get them out of this position they're in. Which I thought was
also because legally, well, of course, everything is up to CCP when it comes down to it. But legally, really, you have to prove that it's intended, right? You need to prove malfeasance.
Yeah. Well, not technically, but you're right. It would, in the eyes of justice, it's good to show somebody's guilty before you punish them. But CCP can basically say, we don't like you, we're going to strike you.
Exactly. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah. Okay, so the coolest thing that came out, we're going to go a little long for people who were wondering. The session finder is something that I hadn't heard about or hasn't been announced until it was in these minutes, right?
Yeah, this is the first public hearing about it, as far as I know.
And this is really cool. What is the session finder?
Basically a way to find content. It's like a way to bring a lot of the stuff that isn't in the client right now or isn't easily accessible within the client into the client. Right now, for example, if you go and look on the in-game map, you can't see where the nearest asteroid belt is. You can't see what anomalies are in your system directly, unless you understand how to do that. You can't see where the nearest agents are. And the session finder is hopefully going to put all that in the forefront, as well as, I think we talked about some other things like, hey, we want ice belts to be put in here. We'd really like it if they could show what ores are in specific systems as well, because that's something that's actually not available within the client. Like, as you might know, only Veldspar spawns in 1.0, and then 0.9 to 0.7 you have something different, and then 0.6 you have a different mix. It'd be really good if they could have that shown in the client rather than
that information it's usually on the web, but it's not in the game.
There's always been this push from the CSM to put more things in client for new players, and this just goes into the nth degree. And I'd love to see resource wars put into this, obviously, along with other things.
Well, there was the other things that were mentioned, as you were just alluding to, is agents, moving the agents where you find agents into there. But also the map itself, and basically it would become your Neocom, right? That would show you what's out there in the world right now. What can you get involved with right now? And I just think that's a pretty brilliant and kind of a no-brainer, right? Somebody gets into the game.
I mean, you look at every other game out there, like pretty much any open world style game, and there's a map in there that says, hey, there's this thing that you can go and do here, and there's this thing that you can go and do there, and there's this thing that you can do over in this bit as well. And it's always amazed me that it's always been so difficult to find that in ETH. So I was really pleased to sort of see those passages as well where that discussion was going on.
I'm not entirely sure I would want cosmic anomalies to be in this session finder.
Why not?
Because that's basically part of exploration, trying to go out and look for these things. I started playing EVE Online during the middle of Apocrypha expansion. I joined around September 2009. So we were halfway through Apocrypha at that time. And originally, to find cosmic anomalies, you did have to run at least one probe scan to find them. I mean, I don't have any objection to the current system of you can see all cosmic anomalies in the solar system and warp to them immediately, but you do have to be in the solar system.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's currently set up, as an FYI. And we didn't say go and add it.
Because the cosmic signatures are ones you need to scan, but the anomalies themselves, which is the ones that just spawn naturally in the system, saying like nullsec or something like that, are just like things that spawn because of the security rating of the system. But the signatures are something completely different.
Well, we don't have cosmic anomalies or signatures, as far as I know.
Okay, good.
Like the system you're in, because that would be really gross tips. Like you would actually be able to track what ratting people are doing in the next door system.
Yeah, totally.
Having any way to interact with that, or no.
Newman, and then I'm sorry to step on you. Newman, then Carneros.
Oh, well, I was just agreeing. Nothing extra.
All right, done. Noted.
On the subject of the session finder, I want to say that that's a really good practice. Putting on for a moment my game dev hat, it's sad when you make something really cool in a game and players can't find it to try it and experience it, and you want to put it out in front of them, and it makes a game stickier and it makes people stay longer and play longer if they get in, find options to do, and then want to go through and just work their way down through it. You see it in other games. It'll sometimes come in the form of a pop-up window or a window that's displayed when you first log in that says, oh, here's suggestions for today. This session finder sounds slightly more Eve-like than that, a little bit less World of Warcraft, which is probably good. I'm looking forward to seeing the UI on how they achieve it, because that's going to be really, really key to its success.
Yeah. So inside of Twitch chat, there's a comment by Arendis there. Can you read that, Seamus? Do you see it?
From the Twitch chat, yes, I see it. I'm reading it now.
Out loud? For our audience.
Arendis says to David Madrall, but given how cluttered and incredibly overstuffed with garbage the user interface generally is already, is there really room for another big chunk of real estate being eaten up by information overload? They can't deliver the information they deliver now in a clean and intuitive way. How are they going to add everything else?
That's a good point.
I mean, we're going to have to see, I can't really comment on the layout of it or anything like that, so just, I'd say wait until you see some screenshots and things like that.
It is the nature of user interface design that you have to keep updating it. I'll point out the example of the updated EVE online forums. It was perfectly working before, but they've improved it and made it more visible and accessible, and they're doing that in game as they can. It's hard when you have to add additional information to display in a limited area, but that it's going to be a challenge going forward, and CCP needs to keep some good UI designers on full-time staff.
Yeah, I agree. And we did get a comment from Zandril that, Seamus, you have a beautiful voice. I couldn't agree more. I want you to read everything, including the introduction for the shows that come on. You're like a book on tape.
Couldn't they also get rather far if they opened up for more customization, like other games have done?
You mean modding?
Yeah, something like that, or similar to that. Something maybe API based or
Pandemic Legion.
I will say that CCP is very scared of that and does not really want people to be able to fuck around with the UI too much.
I don't know if MMOs have mods, do they? It seems like
World of Warcraft.
They do.
Warcraft,
Final Fantasy.
They do. Oh, my bad. All right, so that's go ahead.
Back when I played. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the only thing I wanted to sort of add on onto that is when we're doing UI updates, specifically when we're pulling more information into game to make it easily presentable to the players, so they don't have to go to external resources, is CCP will need to balance out the burden of updating that every time. And I think this is something that CCP already struggles with quite a lot, in the fact that they make a small change, they have to go back and see what points of information and where all these changes affect it. And while I am totally 100% in for pulling as much information as possible, I think CCP probably has to do a lot of work on how they're going to make that efficient internally as well. And I think that's something that they've got to work on a lot.
All right. Well, that's the session finder. Seamus, you had one last thing on this, or?
No, I was just going to say, back when I played World of Warcraft on a regular basis, which was 6 years ago now, basically user-made add-ons were very common, especially for running raids in World of Warcraft. Not that I remember what most of them were anymore, other than raid assist, but they were very common.
Yeah. Okay.
I would love to see a damage meter, a fleet damage meter. I know a lot of people hate that, but I would love to see, it just shows you who's doing the best in your fleet, right? Who's doing the worst.
Well, in general, anything that's just read, right? Read only should really not be such a huge issue to allow some sort of modding or customization.
Well, why would you want to see how much damage your people are doing so you can see who's whoring on kills and just putting in a little bit of damage here and there?
Yeah, just like a real time, like how's your fleet doing? Like what are people doing?
Doesn't it feel like, for fellow F1 pushers in nullsec, doesn't it feel like the FC is the teacher and you don't want to be called out on in class when you're on a fleet, and this would give them more information? Like you there, Matterall, you haven't done your homework. You're only putting in, 2% damage.
In a secret, he doesn't do his homework.
We see things like that in the Alliance tournament where we notice when people burn out their guns and we just call them shit.
Yeah. But it takes them burning out their guns to realize that they screwed up. There's a lot of stuff. You can definitely skate by an Eve and be a bad player. Take it from somebody who is. All right. The last thing about the session finder I thought was pretty cool was, I think Earth brought this up. BPOs, where to buy them, that information isn't readily available. So you may want to get in on something, but you have to find out somehow where to go and buy it. It doesn't say on the BPO where it's built, where you can buy it. You really just have to kind of go and find it. And it's not like exploration. It's you just have to go region to region to find out where things are sold. And some things are sold in ore space.
It's not in the show info window for the. Hold on.
No, you have to go to Fuzzy Steve's site or similar to actually find out.
Right. Third-party site. So one of the things was put information cross-regional on where BPOs can be bought, and I think that makes a lot of sense. That said, BPOs are usually, you have a lot of time to buy them because they've already existed. But when there's a gold rush for a BPO, like the people who are going to get ahead are the ones that know how to get in and out and go and buy those things. And like I said, some stuff, like a lot of the mining stuff that's higher end, is only sold in nullsec in one system, in only 3 stations or 4.
This ties back to a very old topic you had, Merrill, when we were talking about why it was a problem that they removed the wiki. Because basically, they should have used the wiki entries to actually source and make the players help put in the item info content.
It seems like the wiki should have been embedded in the game somehow, like, the old browser was or something, so that you had a library of information inside it so that you could actually play full screen. Because let's face it, anybody who's playing EVE Advanced isn't playing full screen, unless they're high and want to immerse themselves or something. All right. So one of the things, videos, is, again, they want to basically bring back Scope Network, I think, which would be cool because those videos are pretty cool. I only had one problem with them. Maybe you guys disagree, but when they said, we've collected the most brilliant lore scientists in EVE Online, and then they show 6 or 7 scientists standing next to each other, and it's all like the lore panel, and they're all dressed like rock stars. None of them have like a lab coat.
Hey, just a quick question, Noob. Is that like, go into the video thing, check the last paragraph where the CSM asked if they would consider allowing the community a chance to create videos about the factions, and CCP said they wouldn't. I don't remember that being the response. Remember when I pitched like, hey, have you considered like saying having a contest to let players themselves have a go at like,
it was
creating factions?
Yeah, the introduction videos. I feel like they were working on those themselves.
Yeah, no, but I was like, it'd be.
Oh, I didn't realize you wanted players to do that.
Yeah, I was like, hey, could we have the community have a contest to like make some videos for factions so that we can have some more like. Yeah,
as someone from Providence,
I
that's
felt
important.
Like more interested in that than I guess they were. My bad.
No, that's actually the only note that I took out of videos was update racial intros. But I didn't realize you were saying maybe you should open that up to the community.
Oh no, they did have plans previously. They talked about it last summit. It was in the last summit's note to update all of the racial introduction videos.
Does anyone know? Does anyone know if Jamil is still up there as Empress?
Yes, she is, because my grandma said she wanted to be that Empress.
Your grandma does not want to be that Empress right now.
I mean, no, but
Yeah, they should probably update that. Jamil is no longer the Empress, and they have a female character. They really just need to commission another portrait for that sort of thing. All right, and now the big finale, sovereignty and nullsec. And we did talk about structure timers and vulnerability windows already in the show, so we can probably skip that unless there's anything else that you wanted to talk about, because I think Jintan thought that was pretty important.
I mean, no, we can talk about like the general nullsec balance stuff that we got talked about.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple things that came out of there. One was structure timers and vulnerability windows. You can find out about that stuff there. And they also talked about Entosis, which we already discussed, and how people really don't want to do the Entosis thing, and it doesn't promote healthy habits, at least in nullsec, of people not engaging and that sort of stuff. But what I thought was interesting, and I didn't realize CCP was on board with this, that capital ships need a rebalance. And Apple Pear, you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Do you agree with that the capital ships need rebalancing?
Some of them, some things that what I outlined with BFGs, partially faxes and Haas, they are very powerful.
Force auxiliaries are too powerful, they were saying.
Yeah,
that's high-angle weaponry. The Haas, they call them, high-angle weaponry, they're actually too good.
It's hard. We had some fights. If you drop a few Titans with Haas and you have enough faxes that you can keep your Titans alive, then there's nothing you can do against it with a subcap fleet, or you have to bring enough supers yourself. So it's sometimes it can be very overpowered with that. And
worth noting that the reason for that is how the tracking formula works in the game. It measures distance from the center of your model, not the edge of your model, which is how distance is done. And EVE Online, like the shown distance, is edge to edge. So effectively what happens is even if you're sitting at one end of a Titan, the tracking formula thinks you're 30 kilometers away. So you have like easy fucking tracking.
Because those Titans are so big, they basically are, if you're shooting with that weaponry, you're shooting from the tail end of the Titan in one instance, and in a different instance, you're shooting from the front of the Titan, and those are 30 kilometers apart?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I don't know the numbers offhand, but it's why tracking Titans used to work back in the day when we were using cap guns. Cores on dreads aren't a huge problem. The thing is, I don't know how you could fix that without like special casing, giving them a huge tracking penalty, which would also impact like cap warfare. There's a lot of problems there, but I'm sure they'll find some way to fix it.
Well, it's our new legacy code.
Yeah, right. Because pause codes are finally getting
going away. So this is the new one.
The new one. The thing about the Titan is it's so massive. It takes up so much volume that when you do a smart bomb, it starts at the edge of your Titan, radiating out. So you get 9,000. You get 7,000 meters from the front of your Titan if you're using a smart bomb in that direction. But you also get 7,000 meters from the back of your Titan if you're in that direction. But the Titan itself is so big that it gives you an extra, who knows how many thousands of meters. And so your range becomes pretty huge.
And that's the same for battleships.
Kilometers, yeah.
That's the reason why certain battleships are used more for smart bombing than other battleships, because the model is so much bigger.
That's interesting. So the battleship gets that extra bonus too of distance from the smart bomb.
Every ship, it is always at the edge of your ship. So the bigger the ship, the bigger the range of the smart bomb. So with pipe bombs, you want to use certain ships that bigger, so you have more range and cover more.
Which is essentially why, unless you're Santo Traficante, you use battleships to pipe bomb stuff and smart bomb on gates with.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because the NC did this a couple times. We would bring in a couple Titans to wipe out everybody's drones when drones were still a big thing. You sit one on top of drones and they do an area of damage attack, and all those drones are just wiped out really quickly. And it was risky, but you can do that when you have a bunch of extra Titans sitting around waiting to jump in if the first one gets in trouble. Not really fair, but it is what it is. Well, I thought one of the interesting things was how much CCP agreed with this, that the force auxiliaries are probably too strong, and the high-angle weaponry is probably too good at killing small things, if you're a big thing. And then the boson is too strong. I guess none of you guys are surprised.
Yeah, I mean, and they'll look at it in the near future. 6 months to 3 years.
That's always the problem. Near future.
Yeah, but the next time that was there about they talked about in line with this because people getting headshot by it because they drop so many supers and carriers that they have so many fighters and they drop it on FC and they get headshot off the field like all the time, and they're talking about getting that fleet command ship, etc. I'm still not a fan of it, but I don't know. It was good that they talked about it at least, but
yeah.
Well, I don't think it's just about dropping supers or anything like that on some. I mean, people getting headshot with subcap fleets. I mean,
yeah, but it's harder to do. Like if you fit your ship right, they have to bring in full Macario fleet and probably 2 Macario fleets to headshot an FC off the field if they have the right fit and the right implants, etc. But with supers and titans, then there's literally nothing you can do against it.
Quick break. If you look at Jintan on screen, if you're watching the show live or watching a VOD of it, he looks like a very noir figure in the shadows with an American flag behind him that's huge. Even though
Let me angle the camera better one sec.
That was very.
I'll get this looking. Yeah, there we go.
Very
now I'm a villain.
Very film
Now
noir.
I'm about to take over the world.
All right, last thing about sovereignty, nullsec. There's a lot of things we could talk about, but the super carriers are basically too hard to catch. I didn't realize that.
Ratting
that rat,
carriers?
yeah, because you can just rat a line. There's almost no risk as long as you're not that incredibly bad.
Okay,
but that's existed forever. Ratting aligned. I mean,
yeah, no, I definitely get that, but it would be nice to have some recourse.
If they're worried about IS faucets and how much people are making in ratting supers, then why not, make them easier to catch?
And so that's all it is basically you use your super, you align in case you need to get out right quick. You're already ready to warp out, and then you rat that way.
I would contest that this isn't necessarily a massive problem, because all you need is one good dictator pilot, and that super's not going anywhere. Well, admittedly, like the whole point scram thing with a scepter kind of thing, yes, you do need it because, and the reason for that being is because the supers get a bonus to their warp core strength per level, so it's 5 points per level. So if you have like level 5 super carrier, racial super carrier skill, you got 25 points warp core strength, which essentially means you need. My math fails me because I've had a few beers to drink, but you need a lot of scrams on you to stop you from leaving. But one saber pilot will do it.
Well, yeah, but the point that they're making though is it's aligned, meaning you come into system, boom, super just instant warps off, right?
The only way people are
not
catching
even there for you to saber.
Supers nowadays are using blue eyes to see which site they're warping to, and when they warp from one site to the other, then you log in the saber pilot that's already logged off in the system, and then you warp to the site that it's warping to, and then you bubble it. That's the only way to catch supers nowadays.
Right. Well, that's when they're vulnerable, right? Is when they're in warp to the next anomaly and landing, and then getting aligned again.
You do see a lot of
catch them while they're sleeping.
You do see a lot of kill mails for Delve ratting super carriers. That it happens regularly.
Not everybody's good at it.
I'm not arguing that it's too easy or too hard or anything like that. I am saying though that the statistics show that you still can get them.
Yeah, and I'm going to go towards that way that they are still catchable. Yeah, they're difficult, but you can still catch them.
Is the fact that you can still catch them a reason to not make it easier to catch them?
Well, because they're expensive, and
I don't think
I want to lay it down to that. I mean,
you already get a bonus for it being incredibly expensive, which is that you make shitloads of fucking money.
I mean, noisy minds aligned.
If you don't get caught, but yeah.
I mean, if you get caught, can you get yourself out? Rewards like active gameplay.
Yeah. Well, anyway, go ahead.
And that's pretty hard with certain supers too, depending on how they drop it, etc. It's hard to get yourself out. You always need help from others. So.
Yeah, we're not saying, hey, we're going to also take away sonos in sight. We're also going to make it so that you have to die. We're not saying kill all supers. We're saying let supers actually get caught without the use of blue vaults or wormholes.
You're not saying death to all supers, which is something everybody says.
I'm not saying death to all supers. I'm saying risk to all supers. Risk to all supers.
Right. Last thing that came out of this CSM summit, which was kind of funny. I couldn't tell if it was a troll or not, but Aerith, the guys from Goonswarm, Aerith and Anominate basically asked CSM, why isn't everybody else doing what we do in Delve? Like, why aren't you guys winning too? There was no answer.
No. Well, hold on a second. I didn't read it as that. I read it more as the type of living in nullsec that they do. This sort of fully sort of laid out society out in Delve. Top down, bottom up. Industrial. Everything. Market. Why are other groups not doing this sort of full-fledged thing? I mean,
I'm gonna be really mean.
Well, it's like, other groups do things different ways because that's just their style of thing, right? Goons have this,
fully
sort of enclosed society out in Delve and
Imperium and whatnot. And I don't think everyone in the group knows how Imperium. I don't think people know how Delve runs differently from Fountain or Declan or wherever else you want to mention. I'll say for a moment that, for example, Delve is held in common by a group of people. We can PvE in any system in Delve. It's not divided by this corp or this alliance can be in this system or that. There's no, you have mining rights here but not here, and you have ratting rights here but not. No, it's all as a group. We all mingle together. We work together. And there's support for taking care of each other. There's more organization and more tools than you will find in most of these other places, and fewer barriers and walls.
Yeah,
because don't build that wall.
There is a collision among renters in the north where hey, you're on my territory, I paid for this, get out. And there's always disputes about it, and diplomats have to constantly, and maybe one of the biggest jobs Lady Scarlet does is just kind of sorting out these renters that are running into each other all the time. And it just seems very inefficient. But there it is. All right, that wraps up our CSM coverage. And there was some new stuff there. I encourage you to read the CSM minutes if you want to know where the game is headed and some of the stuff that is probably at some point going to make it into EVE, and some of the stuff that you can kind of tell CCP isn't that interested in as well. Advanced players will read these notes to kind of figure out how to hedge their bets as they move forward. So to get prepared for what's coming, it pays to listen to shows like this, and some of these guys who've played a long time and know how the game works and can read between the lines. And also read the CSM minutes to kind of figure out what is actually being said and what is actually rumor. All right, so let's wrap up by talking about, we're going to skip player news today. There was really just a few fights, and that was Test beat the crap out of CO2. Sorry, but they just did. And PL really whomped Providence, taking out 140 billion in ships and trading basically an Astra House in return. There you go. Nice salute, Jintan. I'll give you a few.
Taro, man.
But you won the
asking for a link to the minute.
You won the sympathy war. NC is fighting in it as NC is kind of taken over the moons that they abandoned when they went back to defend their space from goons.
There's only one thing I want to point out on the whole NC thing, and that's armor ravens. Like, what the hell?
What? Explain that.
So, just a quick one. It was on the fleet last night. We were killing an init tower. They brought armor ravens with, in the mid slots, all missile tracking computers that were able to snipe out at 250 kilometers and were just cruise missiling capital ships, like faxes. And we sat there, one of them died. I looked at the kill battle, I was like, what is this? And the funny thing was, it's the whole, they use the command destroyers to just blink around the field. So it doesn't matter where you send the fighters, these ravens were blinking around the field and just carried on shooting. Brilliant.
Oh, this is amazing.
That guy that came up with that doctrine is literally my hero.
Cavalry.
Yep. They even did a whole cavalry thing where they burned in with micro warp drives launching missiles, and just you got a rapid shot of cruise missiles hitting one ship, and it just imploded like so fast. It was not even funny. So yeah, the init guy that came up with that doctrine is officially my hero. And
well, thank God for innovators in this game. They're entertaining.
Totally.
All right, what's this second pit PvP tournament? Is that you, Tiberius?
Yeah. So a couple of guys from the Tuskers are running the pit, which is it's in the second iteration for this year. It's a PvP tournament. It's 2v2, one destroyer, one cruiser versus one destroyer, one cruiser. There are 32 places, 30 of them have been filled. You can contact, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this right, Yemanoa Marinet in game. If you search for the pit PvP tournament on Reddit, you'll find a thread for it, but that's opened up. There's 2 spaces left for that. If you want to get involved with that or get in a nice little one, I recommend get involved in that too.
All right, cool. Put his name inside a chat there so you can see it. We'll put it in show notes. Actually, we don't really do show notes, but I will anyway. All right, let's go into out-of-game events. Tiberius?
Yep, so the Aussies are coming into their spring, starting up with the summer as well. So, of course, they have a whole bunch of meets coming up this month. They've got a meet in Perth on the 16th of September at the Monk, followed by a meet in Brisbane up at the Buffalo Bar, and then Adelaide and a meet in Adelaide at the Elephant British Pub. Both of those are on the 23rd. So if you're in those areas in the world, go check those out. They should be good. There's also a 2-day annual meet in Poland for EVE players as well. I'm not going to try and pronounce the location, but you can find the location on evemeet.net. And that's on the 22nd of September, and that runs for the weekend for 2 days. OmegaCon, which is a big gaming meetup that there will be happening. You can go check that out again on EveMeet. There is an EveMeet and at the LAN gaming department at that OmegaCon, so make sure if you're an EVE player, you go check that out. And then EVE Vegas has now officially sold out. Finished. You're not getting a ticket for that. First time ever, which is just brilliant. It shows how popular EVE Vegas is becoming, and that starts on the 6th of October. So there is plenty of stuff going on in the world, particularly if you're in Australia. Make sure you check out the Poland meet if you're in that Eastern Europe, OmegaCon as well, and EVE Vegas too.
And also get ready for 4 and 5 November Amsterdam. That's coming up also pretty soon.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Wednesday, is that one?
Yep.
Yeah. I also want to know, in the, of course, as soon as it
quiet for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Let me just say this: as long as your phone's ringing, Dirk, it should be noted that EVE Vegas is very popular. It sold out for the first time. It's growing, and in large part, I think, due to our friend here, Dirk McGurk, who pumps that show.
I've got a limited reach on that. I mean, the fact of the matter is that it's word of mouth amongst the community, right?
Yeah. I think fans come to meet you.
Well, bullshit. Well. It was actually in the minutes. There was a discussion of the thing, and they brought it up because I remember when it happened last year when I can't remember if it was Guard or Falcon asked from the stage, raise your hand if this is your first EVE Vegas, and there were a lot. I mean, there were a lot of them. So I mean, we continue to get people who haven't come before, and it's word of mouth. It's not just word of mouth from media types or whatever. It's word of mouth from the people that are the people that are going, that tell their friends and say, yeah, you're going to like this. Come along.
I agree with that, definitely. But I also agree that people kind of look to see what's the minimum at least I'll get to meet Dirk McGurk. I think there's some people that watch. I think there is.
Sorry, whatever.
Or I get to
stop. Maybe it's Matterall. Maybe they're coming to see Matterall. Have you thought about that?
You've been on a lot longer than I have. And the thing about EVE Vegas that Carnero suggested this idea, and I think it's a great idea, is we're going to have something like a Talking In Stations breakfast, where if you want to join us for breakfast, Carneros will be there, Dirk will be there, I'll be there. Basically the American side of the show. Sorry, you Brits, that you didn't come. Tiberius, I try to get a room for you, buddy. But maybe next year.
Man, when it comes to holidays, the wife preference for holidays always come first. Sorry, man.
Well, I don't know. Italy sounds a bit better than Las Vegas, but whatever. Yeah. So anyway, if you did get a ticket for Las Vegas, congratulations. We will see you there. We're looking forward to that. And we definitely want to have a breakfast with all the people who watch the show, because we're all in it together. You guys are part of the show, putting stuff in there. Arendis was putting in a lot of comments today, which is terrific. Most of them usually disagreeing with me, but that's the nature of our relationship. He's usually the smarter one.
I mean, one other thing I do want to say about eVegas, and this goes for other player meets out there, is that it began as just a player meet. I mean, it began out of goons and the CFC putting something together out there, and then expanded. And then, look, CCP is not going to take over all of them out there, but I mean, this is where it begins, right? It begins with players getting together out there for something related to Eve. So I mean, we always need to remember kind of where these things originated from. This was not a CCP idea. This actually began with players just doing something together.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, contributions today. Seamus.
All right. So Zathos Renraku has just resubscribed to the stream for 12 months in a row. The Inimical has resubscribed for 4 months in a row. Fisk 223 has just subscribed to the stream. HRDKX Newman has also just subscribed to the stream, and Wolf Glenn has tipped $50.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Wolf Glenn being the sugar daddy.
Wolf Glenn, superhero. I think it's great to have people support the show and really appreciate it. The channel appreciates it. I appreciate it. Dirk appreciates it. Everybody who does this stuff, we take time out of our lives to do it, and we enjoy doing it. It is nice to see that you guys appreciate it, and that's a really nice way to do that. Thanks. All right. I would like to thank all of you guys that showed up to watch this show. We went a little extra long because there was so much material to cover, but it's great, and we did pile in this time. We really did. And so I want to thank Apple Pear, and Caleb, and Carneros, Dirk, Jintan, Jeronica, who had to leave earlier, Newman, Seamus, and Tiberius. Thank you guys for showing up and contributing to this one. All right. Last comments from anyone.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that if you have any more questions about the CSM minutes, there's a thread up on the Evo forums. Myself, Apophany, Sutonia, and Yukiko will be doing a podcast where we go over some questions later on.
Yeah, great. Anybody else? And my last comment would be that we will tell you more information about the Talking in Stations breakfast at Eve Vegas at a later show. Maybe next week we'll
come see us in Vegas.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. That's it for Talking in Stations. We will see you next week.
Fly safe.
Bye.